Okay, we are going to continue on with chapter 23. Last time we went over some of the different organisms. We went over kind of a timeline when those organisms came to be. And now we're going to go over some different things today with the geologic record. So most of the time animals have existed on Earth. We call this the Phanerozoic era. And it's divided into three different areas right there. We'll talk about each one a little bit later. We're not going to go into major depth with them though, guys, because you don't really have to know all the different categories for the geologic record. I will tell you if there's any of them that are really, really important that you should know, but other than that, we're going to just skim over these. So, like I said, guys, here are all of our different eras in the geologic record. Obviously, if we go all the way down here, all right, we did not, when Earth began, about 4 billion years ago, we did not have living organisms on Earth. It took time for these living organisms to come about. The oldest fossils were definitely prokaryotes. And as I said, Earth over 4 billion years old, probably about 4.5 billion years old. We didn't start to have these prokaryotes until about 3.5 billion years old. And these are the ones that, fused those plates of rock together that we talked about last time. All right. Given this, so we had our prokaryotes 3,500 million years ago or 3.5 billion years ago, whatever numbers you want to do. But eukaryotes, it took us a long time after the prokaryotes to come into existence. All right. Our first cells, again, they were probably prokaryotes, and they also, now slowly, prokaryotes, but they were able to photosynthesize. All right. So our earliest cells were prokaryotes, and they were able to photosynthesize. So here's our stromatolite rocks I was talking about in the last slide. 3.5 billion years ago, that's when our prokaryotes were around. And they were pretty much the only inhabitants of Earth for 1.5 billion years. So good bit of time there. Now, as I said, they were photosynthetic prokaryotes. So what they were doing was they were releasing oxygen into the atmosphere. It was slow, but they did release it. This early photosynthetic prokaryote was probably a cyanobacteria, what we would kind of be close to today. So that is the name of our photosynthetic prokaryote. All right. Now, as I said, guys, they did photosynthesize. They took carbon dioxide in and they converted it into oxygen. In this process, obviously, if they were converting it into oxygen, they were giving off oxygen. And what this did was, obviously, if we have oxygen, it was able for other species to come into existence. However, the opposite also happened too. As oxygen levels continued to increase, we had a mass extinction because of these oxygen levels increasing. Some of the organisms that were alive during that time were unable to handle the oxygen. So if they were able to handle the oxygen in the atmosphere, they survived and they thrived. If they were not able to, they became extinct. So now we're going to talk about mammals. And the group that mammals belong to is called tetrapods. Obviously, 4 legs. All right, makes sense. So here are some different mammals we're going to go over. Some of the very early ones with 300 million years ago. And then we will go to just about 200 million years ago. So the oldest of our mammals were called synapsids. They had a single pointed tooth. And that's the only thing I'm really going to talk about is the teeth in the jaw. They also had a hinge. Let me go back here. So you guys can see, obviously, so this top part can go up and then back down. All right, so they're able to chomp their food. And just so you guys know, in the picture, it doesn't really show the one large tooth very well there. The second one, the teeth got bigger. Obviously, they were probably to try to get food and be able to get into the flesh so they could tear it off. You guys can see the large tooth there. It's pretty much just to hold it in place as they, rip the piece of flesh off. So that was 20 million years those two took to differentiate. After this, we had our Cyanodons. Let's look at our picture of our Cyanodons. Okay, the head became a little more flat, and that large dental tooth up front started to go away. It's still there, kind of, but not as prominent as it was. After this, our Cyanodons, still, they were differentiating. Here's our next one here. The teeth just became a little bit more angled there and a little bit larger once again. So why were they changing is a good question. Why the teeth were just getting bigger and then smaller and then bigger again and smaller again. They kept coming back and forth. Well, probably what was happening, guys, is the food sources were changing during this time. And as the food sources were changing, the animals changed to adapt to the different food sources. Now, obviously, as they were changing, some of the adaptations were being acted on by natural selection. They were going away. And the ones that were able to adapt best to that environment or have the best adaptations, they were surviving, they were reproducing, and completely changing that population. So after this, we had our last one for these Cyanodons. And there's its final, you can see like the back teeth, they look more like almost molars to grind food. But the other thing is about these ones, some of the bones actually that form the jaw, they went away. And they became different bones in our bodies in mammals. And these are the smallest bones in our body, and they make up our ears. Okay, so they're able to help us with transmitting sound. So it's kind of interesting that they were originally part of our jaw, and then later on, they became part of our ear, right? Our ear bones. And they, like I said, they are very, very, very small. They are like smaller than your fingernail. All right, very tiny bones. Okay, so moving on, guys, we're going to talk about some of the extinctions, some speciation rates, things like that. So here is a phylogenetic tree, and we have a common ancestor right here. Now, if you look, it forms two different lineages, and these two different lineages are giving rise to a bunch of different species. Obviously, the ones with the little crosses next to them, they have gone extinct. If they do not have a cross, they are still in existence. And if you look here as we go out, this is our timeline. So wherever the cross is, that is when they went extinct. So there's different plates under the earth and on the earth, okay? And we were once one big supercontinent called Pangea, and we'll talk about Pangea a little bit more later. But there are plates floating on Earth's mantle, and these change over time. So in this area right here, okay, there's different plates. And like I said, there's going to be some movement on these plates. So these plates are moving over time, and it's a process called Continental Drift. And it's happened many, many times in the past with big events, and it also happens on a smaller scale as well, like it's right now. All right, we are not having major big events of movement, but we are, all these continents are still moving. So there are oceanic and continental plates. Obviously oceanic, one's in the ocean. Continental plates, ones that make up our continents. They separate, they slide, they collide, they do different things. when there is an earthquake and things like that, it can have very large effects on our different plates. Also, the other thing I want to mention is our mantle creates a lot of like hot material, and that rises toward the surface, kind of like a volcano. This is how we can get some of the islands that we know today. So here is what Earth looked like originally, and you guys can see where the arrows are. This is going to be movement in these continental plates, causing these different areas to separate from one another. So I told you we were going to come back to Pangea. Pangea was formed about 250 million years ago. Now, with Pangea, since it was one big supercontinent, so we only had, we had a lot of land. If you wanted to go from one side of Pangea to the other side, it was going to take a very long time. It's all the continents together. So given this, all the water surrounding Pangea was actually really, really, really deep, because as this one continent was just chilling there, there actually wasn't a whole lot of surface area touching the water. Now we have all these different continents and all these different areas touching the water, where our surface area of land touching water is much greater, and this is able to give us more shallow areas in these different continents. Pretty much so you guys can play on the beach if you want to. That's what's going on there. Here is the change with Pangea right here, all the way to our normal day up here. All right. So along with this, guys, continental drift, as these continents move, it can also change the climate in that area. Obviously, if it's moving north, it's going to get, well, if it's like at the equator, we could say, if it's moving north, it's going to get colder. If it's moving south, it's going to get warmer. So in other words, if it's going closer to the equator, it's going to be a warmer continent. If it's further away, whether it's north or south, it's going to be a colder continent. As these continents started to separate from one another, and we had islands being formed, we started to go to allopatric speciation. If you remember from last chapter, allopatric speciation was due to geographic isolation. So something happened where maybe there was a geographic barrier in between two species, they couldn't mate, and over time that species changed. So there was an example of frogs in your book. Whenever Madagascar, the island, separated from India, and now we had two completely different species of frogs. The yellow ones are only in Madagascar, and the ones that are in India are like a purple reddish kind of color. Looks like frogs you would not want to play with, just because they look almost poisonous. All right, so we're good here. Okay, so I told you guys we were going to go over some mass extinctions, and there's a few that actually have already happened, and I know some of them you already heard of, like the Ice Age, the Jurassic extinction. Okay, so we're able to, again, guys, as we talked about last time, use the fossil record to see, okay, is this organism still living, or has it gone extinct? A lot of the things with mass extinction, something happens in the environment that changes it so much that the animals just cannot acclimate and cannot adjust to that change in the environment, where they can no longer live, they become extinct. We have had 5 mass extinctions so far in the history of Earth. More than 50%, it's crazy, right, of Earth's species have become extinct. So I'm only going to talk about 2 of our mass extinctions. Obviously, like I said, there was one during the Ice Age, but I'm only going to talk, like I said, about 2 of our main ones here. So the first one is going to be our Permian extinction. So this This was between the Paleozoic and the Mesozoic eras. This was 251 million years ago. So right here, in this area right here, that is when the extinction occurred. So what happened during this time, guys, was we had the formation of Pangea. So this was where our supercontinent formed. And when that supercontinent formed, we had about 96% of our marine animal species going extinct. Okay? So again, we're only going to go over 2 extinctions, guys. Make sure you know the dates on both of these extinctions. You do not have to worry about knowing the dates on all of the geologic eras that we talked about earlier, but do know the dates for the extinction. So the first one is the Permian extinction, 251 million years ago, and it was during the formation of Pangea. So when we have these extinctions, these are some things that can affect the extinctions right here. We might have a volcano going off. We might have global warming, which is going to increase our CO2s. These are just a few things. You guys can read through those. Our second one we're going to go over was the Cretaceous mass extinction. And this one was between the Mesozoic and the Cenozoic eras. This was about 65 million years ago. This corresponds to when the dinosaurs became extinct. Half of our marine species became extinct, and most of our terrestrial plants and animals, dinosaurs, they also went extinct. And then after this, we had the rise of mammals. So what we were thinking, if you guys have heard all of the different ways that, oh, the dinosaurs went extinct this way or this way, we think that it was probably a meteorite impact. Reason being is, as we're studying all the rocks, the sedimentary rock in that area, we found large amounts of iridium, which is on meteorites. So this is why we think that it was a meteorite that caused this mass extinction. Okay. So there is a big crater off the coast of Mexico, and here's a little picture of it. This is what they think happened, and that's where the meteorite hit. As I said earlier, the T-Rex, we found it in the United States, fossils of it, so we know that some of this was actually probably close to us, where the meteorite hit. Okay. So next section, guys, is there going to be a next one? We have had 5 mass extinctions already. Is there going to be a 6th? So unfortunately, they think there will be at some time. It might not be during my lifetime. It might not be during your lifetime. But sometime down the road, yeah, there's going to be a mass extinction. Now, I don't want this to scare you guys. Mass extinctions take millions upon millions upon millions of years. But they think the next one will be because of human interactions with the Earth. And that's going to cause the next mass extinction. So they've noticed that mass extinctions actually occur when it is warmer, a warmer temperature. They found some here, okay? Obviously this one here, that mass extinction, that's our Ice Age one. But the other ones, they found that when it gets very warm, global warming, we have a mass extinction, okay? So with global warming and all that stuff, that's why they're thinking, hey, there could be another mass extinction coming about at some time, all right? Again, maybe not soon. All right, so with mass extinctions, guys, it changes everything up. In a different community of the world, whether, in a community, guys, we have all our different species there, we are going to have, based on that mass extinction, some empty areas to fill in a community. And what we have to do is fill that niche in the environment so that we can have our producers, we can have our consumers, whether they're primary, secondary, tertiary consumers, all these different consumers, so that every hole in that environment is filled. Okay? What's going to happen here is we are going to have, it's going to lead to adaptive radiation when we have a mass extinction. And that's going to help to fill all these different empty areas in the environment that we have. Okay, so with adaptive radiation, guys, like I said, after a mass extinction, we are going to have adaptive radiation. What's going to happen here is we are going to have a common ancestor. That common ancestor is probably going to go extinct. When that extinction happens, we are going to have new species come out from that extinction. So when these new species come out, guys, we are going to fill some of the empty areas in that environment that we need to fill. So that way we have a perfect line of producers and predators, you know, that type of thing. It's like predator-prey with the rest of it. Okay, so mammals, us, after the dinosaurs went extinct, we had this adaptive radiation where we had tons of different mammals being produced, and we all had a common ancestor. After the Jurassic one, we had some marine animals left over, we had some birds left over, and that was pretty much it. All the dinosaurs went extinct. Here's just the original mammal, and we gave rise to all these different animals here. Okay, so let me go over the Hawaiian Islands with you guys. There are a bunch of different Hawaiian islands, and there is a lot of different plants and animals that are native to each of these Hawaiian islands, and you're not going to find them on other islands. What happened is on that specific island, we have these native species, okay? Once they were all together, all these islands were together, we probably had only one species of all of these plants you see here. And as these islands separated, then speciation occurred. In other words, in this thing, it would be adaptive radiation in order to fulfill all the empty areas of those ecosystems of each island. Okay, so that's what happened with the Hawaiian Islands, just as an example of them. Okay, so we'll stop here. We'll finish the chapter next time, guys. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.